So I think the first time that I knew I was different was in the sixth grade. We had a shared computer, and that was back when AOL was a thing. My brother had been on the computer, and I had got on after him, and there was like porn saved onto the desktop. We've never talked about this, but yes, there was porn saved on the desktop, and my brother was looking at porn. So I opened it up, and that was how I started exploring through porn. Um, in doing that, I started recognizing the men more than the women. Um, so that kind of kick started off in me, just like that fascination with like, oh wow, like men are okay. And then middle school and high school, puberty, hormones, and everything, I started noticing the guys over the girls. I had crushes on girls in middle school and high school, but they were more so emotional crushes. They were on girls that I had like really good friendships with and I had really good connections with. Um, but they were never anything physical. So I would often tell myself like those physical attractions that I had towards the guys was just physical and nothing would ever come out of it. I think in hindsight, if I look back through my life, there are definitely times growing up where there were some questionable things. When I was three, around that 3 or 4, I remember watching a Shaggy music video with my brother. And I remember like wrapping my blanket around me, and I was trying to be like those girls in that music video. Whenever commercials would come on for toys, I was jealous of the girls' toys. They always seemed to have better toys than the guys did. Um, when I was 7, I asked my grandmother for a baby doll for Christmas, and I got it. It was a baby alive, and her name was Princess, and she slept next to my bed for like 2 years. Um, in elementary school, people used to make fun of me because I tended to hang out with the girls more than the guys. Um, it's not a lie. It's blatantly obvious that I'm a little bit more feminine than most guys, and those mannerisms were definitely on display at that age. And I used to, there was a certain group of girls in middle school who used to constantly talk about me because of the way that I would look at my nails. I would look at them like this or this, and apparently, if I do that, that means I'm gay. So, um, it seemed like everyone around me knew, but I was definitely the last one to the party. So, Sparrow was a poem that I wrote in November of 2009. Um, it was a very interesting time for me. I had come home after my first year of college, and my first year of college didn't really go that well. Um, and around that time, I had made the decision to, you know, start exploring what I was feeling for the same sex. I had actually joined an online website. It was a dating website for, same sex people. And just, starting to talk to guys just to like build up that confidence. Just to like see, if this is something that is really who I am. And I had started talking to this guy who lived in Michigan, and we had great conversations, and he would send me music of his favorite artists, and one of those songs he sent me was called Sparrow, um, which was like a really cool like indie folk song. and I was inspired by it. And so one night when I couldn't talk to him, I like wrote a poem called Sparrow. Little did I know that when I posted that poem to Facebook and MySpace, that it would start to cause family members and friends to question things. So I'm going to read that poem to you, and it is called Sparrow. Walk into a dark place, a place that has remained hidden. I occasionally visit it, never to let its truth be given. In this place lies a secret that I am so ashamed to reveal. People would have their vicious opinions, and I honestly don't know if I'd be able to deal. I hold this secret, this burden. It strangles the essence that is truly me. Kidnaps my identity all of a sudden and burns any hope of being happy. Then, as I quietly open up this room one more time, I am puzzled to find a window. I look at the trees in the sunshine. Upon a branch sits a tiny sparrow. He is subtle in his movements, yet bold in his presence. His presence keeps me content, while his song soothes my intelligence. Even though I see the sparrow clear as day, his touch is galaxies away. Distance settles in and muffles the pitter-patter of my heart, and my doubts leave me afraid to finally make a start. See, the sparrow came to me at a period when I needed him the most, when I was filling my grave with painful secrets. He flew into an unknown world and discovered the key to my closeted crypt. All of a sudden, there is a need to let myself emerge, and I wonder what life would be like with you. And I must admit that that idea terrifies every part of my being, but I feel as if you could be the one thing that allows me to be true. As I feel as if I'm ready to embark on these uncharted waters, the sparrow returns back to his nest, confuses my intentions even longer, and the gut-wrenching distance settles in. I am not one to be persuaded, but sometimes it happens. The sparrow's song has blinded my perception, and the exterior that protects me is weakened. What I soon will face only marks the day of my birth, that day that my spirit becomes nearly completed. But there is a feeling of something is missing, and I wonder if the shape of the sparrow can fill it. That's if the sparrow would enjoy the place in which I want to call home. A home filled with passion and romance, a heart of sorts, to be honest, but it's all a bet on a moment of chance. Shall there ever be a day when the sparrow perches himself upon my finger? I wonder if it will be as beautiful for him as it would be for me. Would I have everything he longs for? The fear of dissatisfaction plagues the organ that controls everything. With all of these feelings flustering my essence, I allow the sparrow to return to his sacred jungle. One day I shall venture into the jungle to capture him, and hopefully the secret that I have kept will finally see light. As I close the room and place it back into the closet, I leave the window cracked, with the hopes of happiness and belonging flooding my mind, and the wish of hearing the sparrow song once again. Little did I know that poem was the beginning of my coming out process. So my coming out story started off, I want to say, January of 2010. My best friend Carmen had read that poem, Sparrow, and texted me and flat out asked me if I was bisexual or gay. And I told her I was bisexual. So, Carmen was the first person that I came out to. I hadn't yet explored fully what my sexual orientation was at that point, but I knew that I liked guys. So it was easier for me to say I was bisexual. February of 2010, I went on my first date with a guy, and I had my first kiss with a guy. And going into that date, I had it in my mind that I was going to give this a chance, and depending on how this worked out, this was going to be like the thing that clarifies who I am. The date was great, the kiss was great. In that moment, I automatically knew. So we dated for a few weeks. and then we broke up. And I was like extremely devastated. And I had like posted something on Facebook, and my other best friend at the time, Rashida, she messaged me on Facebook, asked me what's wrong, and I told her that I had been dating a guy and we had broke up, and I was like heartbroken. That led to her calling me on the phone, and she cried. She cried her hearts out. So she was the second person that I came out to. So it was like baby steps. Then a wonderful family member and I got into a heated argument on Facebook, and this was in June of 2010. And in her argument, she called me a fairy, which for people of the LGBTQ community, the word fairy can be a very derogatory term when you use that to describe someone. And she called me that, and I like saw red. So I wrote a note back when notes were a thing on Facebook, which was like a blog, and I posted it on Facebook. And basically in that post, like I dogged her out. But I also put in there, like, if anybody ever had questions about my sexuality, that they needed to come to me and ask me directly, and I had no problem being honest. Well, Lord Jesus, that post was put on Facebook, and within hours I started getting messages from family members. My mom started getting phone calls. So in that moment, I had to start being honest, and I started telling people that, I was in fact gay. So that was like at the beginning of June, and then it just so happens that June is Pride Month. So towards the end of June, I went to my first Pride Festival in Cleveland, which was like life changing. I think that's reaffirmed and cemented who I was as a gay person and who Charles was. And I got this pride bracelet, and I wore it. I wore it for like 4 years before I took it off. And that led to my dad asking me if I was gay, and it just kind of triggered from there. So thank you, family member, for getting into an argument with me, because it is because of you that I get to live authentically, which is not what you wanted, but guess what? That's what happened. So I think there is a lot of things that people say either when they're uncomfortable with being around gay people, or when somebody that they know comes out as gay. I definitely think there's a few things that you shouldn't say. Most of these I've had said to myself at some point in time by people in my life. The first one, obviously, is the most common one, is this is just a phase. I think that is so damaging to someone. Working your way up to come out, it takes a lot. Like, coming out in itself for gay people is like a mental health issue, because you have to be confident and okay with who you are in that moment. There's a lot of soul searching. There's a lot of acceptance. For me, there was also a lot of grief involved. Charles is who Charles is, but who Charles is to other people could be a different representation of who I think I am. And there was definitely some grief involved with accepting that Charles is never going to be that person that they think I'm going to be. and that I might have also thought I was going to be until, I came to terms with who I was. So saying that this is just a phase for people who build up so much courage to finally speak their truth, it downplays who they are and what they're willing to, give to you and let them be a part of. So definitely don't say that. Also, I think a lot of people feel like people being gay obviously aren't content with being the sex that they are. So obviously, if I'm a guy and I'm attracted to guys, that must mean that at the end of the day, I want to be a girl. Or if a girl identifies as a lesbian, obviously she wants to be a guy. And I think that's just where ignorance comes in, and people should educate themselves. Yes, there are members of the LGBTQ community who feel like at the end of the day they were born in the wrong body, but being gay or being lesbian or being bisexual isn't that. And I think you can cause more harm when you assume that when somebody comes out to you as gay or lesbian, that's their stepping stone to wanting to be a different sex, which for some people that could be. Just like for gay people, it's not uncommon for us to say we're bisexual at first and then ultimately say we're gay or lesbian. But you definitely shouldn't assume that just because someone likes the same sex that means that they want to transition and become the opposite sex, because that's not what that is. I think the other question, and it kind of ties back into this is just a phase, is not everyone, some people will ask, well, how do you know you're gay? How do you know? Excuse my profanity, but bitch, my dick reacts to certain things. So obviously, my body feels one way, my mind feels one way. I know, and I think it's, when somebody comes to you and tells you who they are, you should believe it. We say that about everything in life. When people are two-faced, when people do kind things, or when people do things out of expectations, we always say people will show you who they are. And I think that should be the same for people of the LGBTQ community. If I'm telling you I'm gay, then that's who I am. And by me telling you that, I'm wanting you to respect me and see who I am. So asking me, how do I know? I've gone through enough of those questions internally to know who I am. One thing, and I think this is common in the Christian community, is when people come out, oh, I'm going to pray for you. I think when you say that to someone, if you are someone who prays in general for the good and the bad, and you are that person who always has people on your heart and you always have their best interests in mind, like, saying that is one thing, but you have those people who only pray when things are bad. Like, you can be living your best life, doing whatever it is that you're doing, and never talk to God or whoever it is that you believe in, until something is bad. So when people say, oh, well, I'm going to pray for you after you come out, most times it's because they think who you are as a person and who you love is wrong. So I would refrain from saying, I'm going to pray for you. I had that happen to me once, and my response was, well, if you want to pray for me, that's fine. Just don't pray for me not to be gay, because that's who I am. I think another big one is, I love you, but I can't accept you being gay or being lesbian or being bi or being transgendered. There's a thing in Christianity where it says, love the sinner, hate the sin. So I think that's where the thought process is, I love you, but I can't accept this part of you. For members of the LGBTQ community, love and acceptance aren't two separate things for us most times. In order for you to love us, you have to accept us. So before you say that to someone, really try to figure out who you are as a person and do some soul searching. Because if you tell somebody I love you but I don't accept you, I don't need you in my life. And a lot of people in the LGBTQ community feel that way. Um, the last one that I'm going to say is one that I have had asked to me, and I think it is so traumatizing and it's so inappropriate. And that question is, as a child, were you molested? I had that question asked to me when I was in college, and I think there's this misconception that if you are male or female, um, and you are molested by somebody of the same sex, that you therefore are going to become gay or lesbian, um, which I think is a valid concern for somebody who is trying to discover who they are. But there are a lot of people within the LGBT community who have never experienced sexual assault, who have never been molested by somebody of the same sex while they were kids, and are gay and lesbians and bisexual. For you to question someone about that, that's very traumatic. That's triggering. If somebody did experience that as a child, now all of a sudden those memories are going to start flooding into their mind, and they're, you don't know what that's going to do for them. You don't know what that's going to do for their mental health. You don't know what they've already gone through to try to deal with that situation outside of being gay, bisexual, straight, lesbian, whatever it may be. Please don't ask somebody, have you ever been molested? That is, to me, that is the rudest and the worst thing that you can ever ask somebody when they're coming out. So I would tell those who are questioning their sexuality or their sexual orientation, or even questioning, you know, was I born in the right body? I would tell them that, what you feel right now is okay. And it's okay to take all the time in the world that you need to find out who you are as a person before you're ready to let the world see who you are. For those who are coming out or have come out, or are thinking of coming out, I would say, it's okay to be afraid. I've been out for 10 years and I still get anxiety because I feel like as a gay person, I'm always going to be put in situations where I'm going to have to come out. Even though I'm out now and I live my life as an out gay man, every time I'm put into a new situation, whether it's a new job or a new social situation, there's always that stress and anxiety of, am I going to have to tell whoever in this area that I'm occupying that I'm gay? And, I've been out for 10 years and that still stresses me out. So I would say, it's okay to be afraid. But releasing your truth into the world and allowing people to see who you really are and your authentic self is such a beautiful thing. And yes, there is hate in the world, but I think that you're going to find that those who love you are still going to love you. Some of them have already known and they're just waiting for you to come to terms with it. And those who aren't supportive of you were never really meant for your life. And, those losses may hurt, but in the long run, it's going to make you stronger. And just know that the stress and the fear and the pain that you feel now, we see it, we understand it, but also know releasing that brings you into a much more beautiful place. I think it is very important for people of the LGBTQ community to lend their voice to the many injustices that are going on in the world today. Um, for me, I find it hard to be a minority. And when I say minority, yes, I am physically presenting as somebody who is considered a majority. You know, I am a white male, but I'm also a gay male. All right, I'm not a white straight male, and I know that if things were to happen, if you put me in a room with a white straight male, it's very likely that that white straight male might be afforded opportunities that I may not be afforded just because I am gay. Um, so I think for me, it is hard to be in the minority and not use my voice to uplift other people who are minorities. To me, as a gay person, it doesn't make sense to me when I see other minority communities like Muslims or women or, you know, the African American community or the Hispanic community say things like, oh, we don't support gay people, when your people in themselves have experienced similar oppression and similar hate just for who they are. So I think it's very imperative, if there is one group of people that are experiencing injustice and are being discriminated against and are experiencing hate and are being targeted just for who they are, just for existing. I think it's all of our responsibilities to stand up for them. We wouldn't have gotten here where we are as a community if it were not for our allies that helped fight those battles with us, that helped sit in those rooms and helped started those conversations and helped march with us. So it is our responsibility to repay them and to be in those spaces with them, to be allies for them. I, as a gay man, could never, ever be discriminatory against women, against people of a different religion, against people of a different race or of ethnicity, because then what does that say about me? I'm somebody who has experienced hate and experienced discrimination. Um, I've had straight people cyberbully me. I have had people tell me that I'm going to hell, that I shouldn't be alive. If I've experienced that, why would I not stick up for somebody else who is going through that? So I think it's very imperative for the LGBTQ community to always be willing to stand up, speak out, and fight against any wrongdoing, injustice that is going on in our world, because if it wasn't done for us, we wouldn't be here today. So I think I would tell him that what you're feeling is okay, um, to not be afraid of learning more about who you are, and that this is just the beginning of you coming into your own and you discovering and living in your truth. I would tell him that there are a whole lot more people that love you and support you and who know your ass is gay as fuck but are just waiting for you to come to the realization. Um, I would tell him that when you come out, you're not going to lose anyone. Everyone in your life supports you, um, for who you are and wants to help celebrate you for who you are. Um, yes, there's going to be a lot of stress, anxiety, and depression, but it is so much beautiful when you come out on the other side, and you should be so excited for the journey that life has planned for you. I think the people, obviously, I would like to thank anyone who has been supportive of me in the last 10 years of, you know, my journey to where I am now, and, trying to be my most authentic self. Um, I want to thank my dad. My dad was so amazing. I talked about wearing that pride bracelet, and he saw me wearing it and was like, "So is this you coming out?" And at that time, me and him hadn't had that conversation yet. Um, and I had told him, yeah. And he said, "Well, are you sure this is not just a phase?" And I told him, "Well, if you're expecting it to be just a phase, don't hold your breath." And, when we left that conversation, he looked at me and he was like, "Look, don't ever hide anything else from me. I love you." Um, I think for dads who have sons, there's this expectation, I think, that dads have with sons, the same way that with moms have with daughters. They treat them a little bit differently. Um, and I think, my dad had to come to the realization that his son, his namesake, we have the same name, was not going to be ideally the person that he thought he was going to be. It took my dad a long time to be able to accept the fact that I had a boyfriend, without referring to him as somebody else, my friend or my buddy. My dad has been really great, really supportive. Realistically, everyone in my life has been really supportive. I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to my mom. My mom was the one person that I actually never came out to. I just was who I was, and I remember when I was dating my ex-husband, I just brought him home for Thanksgiving one year, and it just was what it was. And I never felt judged. I never felt, less than. And, I remember being told that, my mom always wanted to know how come I never, came out to her. How come I never told her I was gay? And it was because I never felt like I needed to, because I felt like out of everyone in the world, she saw me the first, and there was no reason for me to tell her who I was because she already knew. So my mom passed away 2 years ago, and if I could go back and change things, I probably would have that conversation with her just so she had it because she wanted it. But I know that she's looking down on me, and she needs to know that I never had that conversation with her because I didn't think I needed to, because I knew that at the end of the day I was her baby boy and she was gonna love me regardless. And so I want to thank her so much for just always loving me and being there for me and just accepting me. Please just remember, at the end of the day, no matter what's going on in the world, who's sitting in the White House, who's saying that you don't belong in the space that you occupy, always remember, love will always be more powerful than hate. There is always going to be somebody who loves you, and unfortunately there is always going to be somebody who hates you. But at the end of the day, love is more powerful than hate, and love will be the thing that carries you through.